And his opponent is Grandmaster Hans Niemann.
When Hans Niemann walked in for the semi-final of the Speed Test Championship, he didn't tiptoe in. He stormed the gates. "I'm going to fuck everybody up in Paris," he declared. It wasn't just bravado, it was a promise, a challenge, and a shot fired at the entire chess world.
When you wake up on September 9th and you're the Speed Chess Championship winner of 2024, what did you have to do right in the two matches?
I think that this will be a match of minds. I think that on a chess level, I've shown that I can beat anyone, and I performed it as best as I could. So I don't think that it will be set on the chessboard. I think that he's already broken, as I broke in the Single Cup. And when I saw his interview after his Eruditi match, he already seemed broken and mentally destroyed. So I think that as long as I can look him in the eyes and understand that there's absolutely nothing that he can do to even enter my mind space, then I believe that victory will be mine. I think this is a battle of minds, and on the chessboard, I've shown that my highest level is the best in the world.
But what followed wasn't a coronation. It was a humiliation never seen before on a big stage. Hans Niemann quickly learned that the players he breezed past in the online qualifiers were not like the titans waiting for him in Paris. The air was different here, the pressure was heavier, and the lights were harsher. The first opponent Hans Niemann faced was Magnus Carlsen, the world champion, the man who had walked away mid-tournament rather than play Hans Niemann in a previous match, the man who had accused Hans Niemann of cheating. Although some people thought this would be a perfect moment for a comeback for Hans, Magnus proved everyone wrong. He dismantled him. He was clinical, cold, and unforgiving. Next was Hikaru Nakamura, another vocal skeptic of Hans Niemann's rise. In their battle for third place of the competition, Hikaru made a statement and Hans Niemann was nothing but the punctuation mark. And just like that, the bravado of Hans began to decay. Memes, tweets, and Reddit threads were all over the place. Everyone had an opinion, and most of them pointed in the same direction, that Hans Niemann is a cheater. For Magnus Carlsen and Hikaru, at that point, they never said Hans was a cheater, but their actions and smirks and silence screamed it. A growing narrative took hold that Hans may be gaming the system online, thriving where oversight is thin, and shrieking in arenas where anti-cheating measures leave no place to hide. The worst part, that narrative stuck. The louder the world got, the quieter Hans Niemann became. Chess wasn't speaking for him anymore, and neither was he. The domino effect of Hans Niemann's defeat was swift and brutal. Tournament organizers stopped calling. Invitations also dried up. And when Hans tried to speak up about it, no one cared. He blew his one chance Chess.com gave him to prove himself. To save himself and his reputation from this boycott, which is definitely destroying his career, Hans Niemann had to do what most wouldn't dare. He built his own stage.
Hello Chess World, I'm very happy to announce the Hans Niemann Against the World series.
He launched a bold new series called Niemann Against the World. It was a line of exhibition matches where he would take on top players with no exception. He called out everyone, Magnus Carlsen, Nepo, Hikaru, and he even offered them prize money if they showed up and actually defeat him. But none of them wanted to share a ball with Hans. His name had become radioactive. The first opponent Hans Niemann faced after he re-strategized was a French grandmaster and a former top 10 player. Hans Niemann defeated him cleanly. But guess what? The world barely blinked. After this was an English top-rated player. Most expected Hans Niemann to fold and lose this match, but Hans did not. He actually won cleanly and convincingly again. And for the first time in months, people started paying attention again. The question now wasn't whether Hans was done. It was what if he was just getting started. After these two games, then out of nowhere, Anish Giri, one of the caliber of players Hans wanted to play to show that he was good and he could compete against the big boys, accepted the challenge. For Hans Niemann, this was it. His first real shot has proven he could stand toe-to-toe with the best, without excuses, without a shadow of scandal, and this time, he did not miss. He beat Anish cleanly, and as if that wasn't enough, Hans followed that victory up by defeating Vidit Jurati, another super grandmaster, in a separate match. These victories should have been breakthrough moments for Hans Niemann, but they were not. There were no standing ovations for him, no triumphant headlines, no redemption, just silence followed by suspicion. Because these exhibition matches were not official and they were organized by Hans himself, a lot of people saw it as performance rather than proof. Because there were no neutral arbiters, no anti-cheating system, just Hans Niemann, his setup, and whoever was willing to show up. These victories divided the chess world. On one hand were people in support of Hans, confident he has proven himself, while on the other hand were individuals who were not convinced one bit. In all these clashes, what happened next shook the entire chess world again. After months of being boycotted, blacklisted, and pushed to the sidelines by the top players he called out, Hans Niemann finally got a call. This time, it came from the inside of Magnus Carlsen's camp, the man who had accused him of cheating. A top player that had played and trained with Magnus Carlsen for years accepted to play Hans Niemann, but there was a catch. Whoever lost would be strapped to a polygraph, and the winner would ask one question. Any question, no limit. This was no longer about chess. This was about honor. And both players walked into that match knowing they weren't just playing for a win. They were playing for the right to ask the one question that the world had been afraid to answer. The player in question was Daniil Dubov. And make no mistake, even though no one said it out loud, we all knew what this meant. If Dubov won, there was only one question the world wanted answered. Did you cheat against Magnus Carlsen? Hans Niemann knew this as well, so he didn't just want to win. He wanted to flip the narrative. He wanted to be the one asking the question, to reclaim the mic. But once again, Hans Niemann lost the match. And that changed everything. For the polygraph test, the stage was set. The date was hinted. Fans were ready waiting for the moment Hans Niemann would sit, strapped to a polygraph, and finally answer the one question no one had been able to ask directly. But guess what? Hans Niemann did not show up. He was heavily criticized for this. And after much name-calling and finger-pointing, a video eventually appeared of Hans Niemann speaking to a doctor.
Have you ever cheated in an over-the-board chess game?
No.
Is today Wednesday?
Yes.
Did you beat a Carlsen in an over-the-board match?
Yes.
After a careful analysis of the subject's charts, it's my professional opinion that is being truthful to the questions asked.
But by then, the damage was already done. People called it fake, people called it edited, and people said he's ducking again. Because of this, whatever was left of Hans Niemann's credibility took another blow. It felt like the end. The noise, the hate, the doubts, and everything else was just too loud. But even with all of this, Hans Niemann never stopped being in the headlines. And this time, it was for the right reasons. Some months later, Hans Niemann was invited to the prestigious Freestyle Chess Grand Slam, a revolutionary event boasting the strongest players on earth, including Magnus Carlsen, and it also had the most advanced anti-cheating system the chess world had ever seen. His entry was a wild card, earned by winning the 2024 Grenke Opening, which made him bypass the usual qualification route. Now, everyone waited to see what would happen when Hans played under full surveillance. No shadows, no excuses, just pure chess. It is important to note that this competition had Magnus Carlsen playing in it as well. So, definitely there was tension. And when the organizer of the event was even asked, he admitted it plainly that Magnus Carlsen does not like the fact that Hans Niemann was playing in this competition, but he had no option but to accept it. The organizers made one thing clear: the tournament will be bulletproof. Total transparency, every move and every moment will be monitored, even your heart rate. As every normal person, Hans Niemann accepted the invitation. He even brought out Vladimir Kramnik and even promised that he's going to stream his games live. This was it, and the stage was set for redemption. And then, guess what? Just 48 hours before the event began, Hans Niemann vanished. No warning, no explanation. He just withdrew, citing vague personal reasons. And worst of it all was he stopped replying messages, calls. It was just all silence from him. Hans Niemann later released a statement denying any connection between his withdrawal and the anti-cheating protocols, calling the speculation absurd. This time, nobody listened. And one could argue they were right, because the timing raised eyebrows. The tournament was designed to showcase honesty and integrity. If there was ever a time for Hans to flip the script, this was it, and instead, he stepped away. The long-awaited rematch between Hans Niemann and Magnus Carlsen never happened, and in its absence, only questions remained. Rather than embrace the opportunity to compete on the most secure and most prestigious stage, Hans chose instead to focus on online events like Title Tuesday tournament with significantly lesser anti-cheating protocols. There, he might notch the occasional win against top players like Hikaru and even Magnus Carlsen in a single blitz game. These isolated victories would often be followed by self-congratulatory posts on X, amplifying the moment as if it were definitive proof of his strength, while conveniently avoiding formats where full transparency and oversight were non-negotiable. Then came the freestyle chess in Las Vegas, the pinnacle of modern chess innovation. The world watched as the names were unveiled. Magnus Carlsen, Hikaru Nakamura, Fabiano Caruana, Gukesh, the reigning world champion, Pragnanda, and Vincent Kaimal. Every name mentioned expected, and every slot were accounted for. For Hans, he was not invited, not after turning down the one stage with the highest anti-cheating protocol. No way he would be back. But as the competition got to the 5th round, Hans Niemann was in the news again. This time, it was not for something bad, but for something actually good. For better understanding, the competition that happened in Las Vegas, the players were split into 2 groups, Group White and Group Black. The white segment was led by Prag, Abusatorov, and Linderov, and on the other hand was the black segment, which had a very strange positioning after the first round. It was the standing of the black segments that got Hans Niemann into the news. He was second on the log, only losing to Hikaru. But what happened? Hans Niemann was not invited. And how come he got on the log? Turns out that although he wasn't invited by the organizers, he went through the hard task of playing through the preliminary round of the competition and fought his way up to qualify for the tournament. And when the competition started, although he was not part of the players that got invited, he qualified through the preliminary stages and totally dismantled all his competitors. He dominated the group stage over the likes of Fabi, Arjun, Vidit, and players that were actually invited into the tournament. This impressive display shook all the top players that were invited, including Magnus Carlsen himself. But this was not the real shocker. What happened after in the competition's next stage sent waves down the chess world. As the competition progressed, we were sure it took only a matter of time before we'd get another clash between Magnus Carlsen and Hans Niemann. But before that, Magnus had to face another great player, Levon Aronian, at the playoff. Nothing crazy was expected of this match. It would be an easy win for Magnus Carlsen. But it was not in any way. Levon Aronian came with the upset, defeating Magnus Carlsen 2-0. Everyone in the world was shocked. But Hans? Never. He made the most out of the situation and was visibly happy to see one of his haters eliminated. As if that was not enough, in the next round, Hans Niemann had a time of his life with his opponent, Jovakir Sindarov, defeating him 3.5 to 1.5 after tiebreak. On the other hand, was one of Hans Niemann's critic, Hikaru Nakamura. While Hans Niemann enjoyed his victory, Hikaru also fell short to Levon Aronian after tiebreak 1. The situation that played out in this competition was like when Kendrick Lamar said in his song,
I was gonna kill a couple rappers, but they did it themselves. Everybody's suicidal, they didn't even need my help.
Hans Niemann didn't even need to eliminate his enemies. They eliminated themselves. Next for Hans Niemann was Fabiano Caruana, the 3rd best player in the world. Hans Niemann knew he had to win at all costs. Fabi was a big dog, and since Magnus Carlsen and Hikaru weren't available to represent the top grandmaster, defeating Fabi would send a statement, a huge one entirely. And Hans Niemann did just that, defeating Fabi in the semi-finals to qualify for the finals. Although he lost in the finals, but that wouldn't matter because watching Magnus Carlsen and Hikaru battling for 3rd and 4th place while he was 2nd was more than enough joy.